on your money, and we've talked a lot over the last year about the emerging condo cliff, a glut of condos on the market leading to lower prices and a lot of frustration for sellers.
I have to support these kind of expenses.
Michael Achese is having a hard time selling his condo at the Scion on South Ocean Drive in Hollywood. His one-bedroom, two-bath unit has been sitting on the market for more than a year.
They say the Sunshine State never sleeps, but right now, Florida's wide awake in panic. The condo market that once made millionaires overnight is unraveling in real time. Prices are sliding, sales are stalling, and somewhere in Tallahassee, the governor's temper just hit its breaking point. What began as a routine press briefing turned into a full-blown meltdown. Reporters shouting questions about collapsing deals, panicked homeowners, and another round of insurance hikes. DeSantis slammed the podium, his voice echoing through the chamber. We are not in crisis. But the numbers say otherwise. Thousands of pending contracts have vanished, insurers are bailing faster than hurricane evacuees, and the state's proudest boomtowns, Miami, Fort Lauderdale, Palm Beach, are starting to look like case studies in what happens when paradise gets over-leveraged. The governor may have lost his cool, but the market? It's losing something much bigger. Because this isn't just a housing dip, it's a reckoning that could shake Florida's entire economy. And what triggered it all will shock even the people who thought they saw it coming. Before the panic, before the headlines, Florida was glowing. From 2020 to 2023, it was the land of escape, a sunny promise during a dark time. Americans were fleeing cold cities, high taxes, and lockdowns, chasing freedom, warmth, and cheap real estate. South Florida became their finish line. U-Hauls lined the highways. Investors fought bidding wars over condos they'd never even seen. In Boca Raton, a three-bedroom that sold for $480,000 before the pandemic closed for nearly $1 million by spring 2022. In Fort Lauderdale and Miami, modest ocean view units doubled in value within months. Realtors described it like a feeding frenzy. Cash buyers waiving inspections, retirees offering over asking, families draining savings just to secure a spot near the water. Governor DeSantis couldn't have asked for better optics. Florida's growth became a political trophy. At every press conference, he pointed to record migration, booming jobs, and soaring home values as proof that the free state of Florida had beaten the odds. Cameras captured him smiling beside developers breaking ground on luxury towers. His slogan practically wrote itself, "Florida's booming because Florida's free." And for a while, that felt true. Construction cranes dotted the skyline. Every sale set a new record. Every closing was another headline. But what no one wanted to admit was that the boom was running on fumes. Cheap interest rates, federal stimulus cash, and insurance loopholes created a false floor under the market. Even as the demand surged, costs were quietly catching up. Materials, insurance, maintenance, and taxes. Beneath the bright surface, something was brewing. A bubble so fragile, it only needed one spark to blow apart the illusion. And that spark was already burning. It didn't happen overnight. The warning lights were flashing long before the crash. People just didn't want to see them. In late 2022, analysts started whispering about Florida's overheated housing market. Mortgage rates had doubled. Insurance carriers were quietly pulling out. And property taxes, once manageable, began to balloon as counties scrambled to catch up with record valuations. But no one wanted to spoil the party. Developers kept breaking ground. Politicians kept cutting ribbons, and local news outlets, hungry for good headlines, kept celebrating Florida's unstoppable rise. Behind the scenes, though, cracks were spreading. Condo associations were suddenly buried in maintenance reports. Insurance adjusters began refusing coverage for older buildings with outdated wiring or roofs over 15 years old. One by one, major carriers filed for bankruptcy. Vestal, United Property and Casualty, St. John's, each collapsed, leaving thousands of policyholders stranded. For homeowners, renewal letters turned into shock notices. Premiums doubled. then tripled. A Miami retiree went from paying $2,800 a year for coverage to over $7,000, and that didn't include flood insurance. Even banks were getting jittery. Lenders began rejecting loans on entire buildings. If a condo couldn't prove it was structurally sound or didn't have enough reserve funds, it was blacklisted. That meant no financing, no buyers, no exit. But the state kept assuring residents everything was under control. DeSantis promised that new reforms would stabilize the market. The truth? Those reforms hadn't even begun to address the root problem: too much growth, too fast, on foundations that couldn't keep up. Then came the moment that shattered the illusion. The numbers finally turned. Inventory started rising. Buyers vanished, and the very market that had made Florida a national success story was about to expose just how fragile paradise really was. The shift started quietly, a few canceled closings here, a couple of price drops there. But within months, the silence became deafening. By early 2025, South Florida's once unstoppable condo boom had turned into a buyer's ghost town. Listings that used to vanish in hours now sat for months. Agents stopped answering calls because no one was calling. According to statewide housing data, condo sales dropped by more than 25% across Miami-Dade, Broward, and Palm Beach. Inventory ballooned by over 35%, flooding the market with nearly 80,000 unsold units. Half of all listings had at least one price cut, a crash in slow motion. Buildings that were once symbols of luxury turned into cautionary tales. Developers began offering desperate incentives: free parking, waived HOA fees, move in now, pay later deals, anything to stop the bleeding. But nothing worked. The biggest red flag? Financing froze. Banks flat out refused to lend on hundreds of buildings after new inspection laws exposed decades of neglect. Old wiring, cracked concrete, roofs long past their lifespan. Entire condo towers were suddenly unmortgageable. And when financing dies, the market dies with it. Investors who bought 5 or 10 units during the boom were now trapped. Rents stopped rising. Maintenance fees doubled. Every month that passed pushed more owners underwater. Some panicked and listed their units at any price they could get. Others just walked away. The same streets that once echoed with the sounds of new construction were now filled with moving trucks going the opposite direction. Governor DeSantis' office tried to downplay it, calling it a temporary market correction. But the data didn't lie. For the first time in years, Florida's dream homes were worth less than their mortgages. And the storm brewing above the market? It wasn't just economic, it was literal. Because the next hurricane season was about to make everything worse. If the market collapse was the spark, the insurance crisis was the gasoline. Florida's insurance system had been on life support for years, but 2025 pulled the plug. 6 major carriers had already gone bankrupt since 2021, and by mid-year, even the national companies wanted out. Farmers, Sepulveda, United Property, and Casualty. Gone. One after another, they dropped policies across the state, leaving homeowners scrambling to find coverage days before renewals expired. Those who managed to stay insured were hit with bills that felt like punishment. Average premiums in South Florida passed $6,000 per year, nearly 4 times the national average. For waterfront condos, it was worse, $8,000, sometimes more. And that didn't even include flood insurance, which FEMA's new Risk Rating 2.0 recalculation had quietly doubled. Condo boards were forced to choose between massive special assessments or letting coverage lapse. A board president in Fort Lauderdale summed it up perfectly. "We're not running a building anymore, we're running a financial triage center." With private insurers fleeing, Florida's state-run Citizens Property Insurance became the last resort. It was supposed to be a safety net, but it had ballooned into the largest insurer in the state, holding over 1.4 million policies and more than $500 billion in hurricane exposure. State analysts warned one direct hit from a major storm could bankrupt the system. That's not theory, that's math. And when the math stopped making sense, the panic began. Banks froze closings, refusing to fund uninsured properties. Buyers backed out. Agents started hearing the same thing from lenders over and over. No insurance, no deal. It was a domino effect. One unpaid premium led to one canceled sale, which led to another defaulted loan. In a matter of months, Florida's real estate machine went from red hot to ice cold. Governor DeSantis took the podium, vowing reforms and promising that citizens would remain solvent. But behind the political talking points, homeowners knew better. Their bills were real, their coverage was shrinking, and the companies that were supposed to protect them had already packed up and left. Then came the real breaking point, when the next storm alert hit, and overnight, the entire system froze. It was supposed to be just another press conference, routine, controlled, perfectly staged. But that morning, everything was already unraveling. The night before, a new hurricane warning flashed across South Florida's coastline. It wasn't even a major storm yet, just a Category 1 forming off the Bahamas. But within hours, lenders froze funding on every pending real estate deal from Miami to Palm Beach. Insurance companies issued blanket moratoriums, no new policies, no renewals, no exceptions. Hundreds of millions in transactions were suddenly stuck in limbo. By dawn, the headlines were brutal. Florida housing market on lockdown. State insurer on edge. Citizens may trigger emergency assessments. And that's when the governor walked in. Reporters packed the briefing room. Questions flew faster than he could answer. How many deals are frozen? What's your plan for homeowners with no coverage? Can citizens survive another storm season? At first, DeSantis stayed calm, measured, firm, but the tone changed when a reporter mentioned the words market collapse. He gripped the podium tighter, voice rising. Florida's strong. The fundamentals are solid. What's happening is temporary panic, not reality. He snapped at a follow-up, calling the press alarmists and accusing out-of-state investors of sabotaging confidence. Behind him, staffers exchanged uneasy glances. The cameras kept rolling. His voice grew louder, sharper, angrier. He jabbed his finger at the crowd. We're not in a crisis. Stop saying we're in a crisis. The clip hit social media within minutes. By nightfall, it had over 2 million views under one headline. Governor loses it over market crash. Meanwhile, the numbers told a colder story. Pending condo sales had dropped 25% in just 1 month. Inventory was at a 5-year high, and insurance moratoriums across the state had frozen nearly $300 million in property deals overnight. For Floridians watching at home, it wasn't just a political outburst, it was confirmation of what they already feared. If the man in charge was losing his cool, maybe the state really was in trouble. And the next wave of fallout was already building, because as the governor fought the headlines, the human cost was about to hit home. While politicians argued and reporters hunted for sound bites, the people actually living through it were losing everything. Across Miami, Fort Lauderdale, and Palm Beach, homeowners opened their mailboxes to find letters that felt like eviction notices. Special assessments, $40,000, $60,000, even $90,000 per unit. Condo boards cited mandatory structural repairs and insurance recalculations. For many retirees, that wasn't just an inconvenience, it was financial death. Diane Foster, a 71-year-old teacher who bought her 2-bedroom condo in Hollywood back in 2005, said her monthly dues had jumped from $800 to $2,100 in less than a year. I can't sleep, she told a local reporter. I worked my whole life to retire here, and now I'm being priced out of my own home. And she's not alone. All across South Florida, residents on fixed incomes are cashing out retirement accounts or taking second mortgages just to cover insurance and repair bills. Some buildings, overwhelmed by the costs, have started talking about termination sales, selling the entire property to developers for pennies on the dollar just to walk away from the debt. Meanwhile, younger families who stretched to buy during the boom are now trapped in units worth less than they owe. Their savings are gone, their insurance premiums are crushing, and their Florida dream has turned into a never-ending bill. But perhaps the cruelest twist is for those trying to sell. Buyers won't touch buildings with unresolved inspections or sky-high dues. Banks refuse to lend, insurers won't cover, and realtors whisper the phrase that's become South Florida's new curse word: blacklisted. Entire buildings blacklisted. No financing, no coverage, no escape. And while residents fight to stay afloat, the ripple effects keep spreading. Local contractors are overwhelmed, charging premium prices for mandatory repairs. HOAs are taking out high-interest loans just to meet deadlines. Insurance brokers are turning people away because there's literally nothing left to sell. By late 2025, some Floridians started leaving altogether, packing their lives into moving trucks and heading north to Georgia, Tennessee, or Texas. It's a quiet migration born not of adventure, but of exhaustion. And as more for sale signs appeared where palm trees once symbolized success, one uncomfortable truth became impossible to ignore. This wasn't just a housing crash, it was a social one, a slow-motion unraveling of a dream sold on freedom, sunshine, and affordability, now replaced by debt, heat, and fear. By the end of 2025, Florida's once golden skyline looked very different. The cranes were still there, but many stood frozen, half-finished. Construction sites went silent. Developers pulled funding. And the dream that had defined the Sunshine State's boom was now buried under rising insurance bills and stacks of foreclosure notices. Economists called it a market correction. Homeowners called it betrayal. Because for the people on the ground, this wasn't numbers on a chart. It was their savings, their stability, their peace of mind. Governor DeSantis scrambled to project confidence. He announced new reforms, extended condo inspection deadlines, property tax credits, and temporary relief for insurance premiums. He promised stability and resilience. But even as he spoke, analysts warned the problem had already outgrown politics. Florida's entire housing ecosystem, insurance, lending, development, and infrastructure had become structurally fragile. A single hurricane, experts warned, could trigger an economic chain reaction. One storm, one direct hit, and the state-run Citizens Insurance Fund could implode, leaving millions of Floridians paying hurricane taxes just to keep the system alive. And while officials argued over risk models and policy caps, real people were making choices no one should have to make. Sell now at a loss, or stay and drown in costs. Keep the lights on, or keep the insurance active. Work another job, or lose the home you built your life around. The ripple effects are spreading beyond Florida. Other coastal states, Texas, Louisiana, even parts of the Carolinas, are starting to see the same warning signs. Inflated markets, aging buildings, and insurers quietly backing out. Economists now call it the Florida effect. But beneath the politics, the headlines, and the panic, there's a deeper story, one about human nature. When times are good, we ignore the cracks. We call risk opportunity. We call luck leadership. And we tell ourselves the sun will always shine. But paradise doesn't last forever. And Florida's condo crash is proof that even the brightest dreams can sink under their own weight. Because the real question now isn't whether the market can recover. It's whether the people who built it still believe in the dream. This was Florida's rise and reckoning, and the storm hasn't even hit yet.
Buyers are few and far between. Lending has become a minefield. For owners hoping to sell, the options narrow by the week. For those left holding the keys, the math is unforgiving. But experts caution that shifting demand only moves the pressure elsewhere. The same insurance carriers that retreated from Miami are watching coastal risks in the Carolinas and Gulf states. national housing market is now on alert, watching to see if Florida's crisis is a warning or a preview. For policymakers in Tallahassee and beyond, the message is clear. The ripples from South Florida's condo collapse aren't stopping at the state line. Every new round of outbound migration and every expert warning raises the stakes for housing markets